Hey YouTube, today I would like to talk about my racist job interview in the Charlotte area. I recently moved back to New York from Charlotte because I decided that Charlotte is not the right place for me right now because of that experience being one, and also because it's more of a family oriented place. Even in the city part, I noticed that I would see a lot of families together, and it kind of felt a little different for me not being close to family in New York. So I just decided that the best option right now would be to live closest to family, and New York was the answer. So getting into the topic, my racist job interview in Charlotte. This happened like maybe 3 weeks ago when I was still unsure as to whether or not I was going to stay in Charlotte. And it so happened that I saw this job and I was saying to myself, okay, let me see if it works out, then maybe I should give Charlotte another chance. So I took the chance and wasted gas money. Well, I actually took a cab there to see how the interview would turn out. So when I first get in the room, the guy who was interviewing me was on the phone, and he was on the phone for a good 20 minutes. So I was sitting in a room for 20 minutes looking at him on the phone and waiting until he was finished doing whatever he was doing over the phone. So that was awkward because I was there and I would have hoped that he would have been prepared for me once I was there. But I guess okay, that I had to watch him do his whatever he was doing over the phone. So I thought that was kind of rude and disrespectful. So when he finally finishes doing what he was doing on the phone, he looks at my resume on the computer and start asking me random questions like, why did I decide to move to North Carolina? And I noticed that a lot of Southern people ask that question, and that question annoys me because in my mind I'm thinking, why is it a problem that I'm moving to the South? Like, is it like why do some Southern people have an issue with Northerners coming to their hometown? Like, I don't understand that. And furthermore, the transplants are the ones who's making the cities more developed and better, because I do believe that most of these constructions that are being done in many major cities, even though Charlotte is not a major city, but it's a developing city, but I would like to think that most of these developments in these cities are being done for transplants. So it makes me even more frustrated when these natives ask me like that, a stupid question like that. But my answer to that question was I moved to North Carolina because of family, because I was convinced by family to give Charlotte a chance, because I initially wanted to try Texas, but I don't have any family members in Texas. So I took my family members' advice and chose Charlotte over Texas, thinking that I would have a better experience. But once I moved there, I realized that I was by myself, and I was a little upset about that because I was under the impression that I would have a better relationship with my family that are in the Carolinas. But unfortunately, it didn't work out as I would have liked it to work out. So I guess the lesson learned was to just go for what I believe is the best step for me to go in, and not take family advice, assuming that I was gonna have a family experience that I was hoping to have that I missed in New York City. So I told him that I moved because of family, and on top of and after that question, he asked me, okay, you're from New York, and he rambles on and tells me that he hired a guy who was from New York who robbed the establishment, because the job that I applied for was at a bank, was for a bank job. And I just thought it was interesting because I'm thinking in my mind, okay, this man happens to be white, an older white man telling me this, and I happen to be a black woman, and he's telling me he didn't disclose the race of the person, but I'm assuming that the guy he's talking about was a black guy. So he goes on and says that the guy that he hired from New York City robbed the bank of over $300,000, and once he discovered that, he was like hunting the man down. He was at his in front of his house for 3 days straight until the FBI caught the guy. And he also explained to me that he managed to get most of the money back from that experience. And when he told me that story, I just started laughing, like uncontrollably, because I was thinking in my mind, like what the hell does this story have to do with this job interview? I don't know if it's me, but I just get the impression that a lot of Southern people have a disdain for New Yorkers. I don't know if it's a envy. I don't know if it's a intimidation thing, but whatever it is, I think it needs to stop, and I think it needs to be addressed, because not all New Yorkers who move to the South are criminals, and not all New Yorkers who move to the South are scammers. So to me, that was for him to share that story with me. I thought it was very racist and very disrespectful to me. And then on top of that, when I did laugh, because I was laughing instead of cursing him out, because I really wanted to curse him out and tell him, like, what the hell does this story have to do with this job interview? But I kept my cool and I just laughed instead of cursing him out. And once he started seeing me laughing, he didn't ask me, "Oh, did you know the guy?" And then I said, "No, I didn't know the guy," because it took so much in me not to tell him how I really felt. I was so upset that I had to rant to family members about it, and the ones that I did rant to the story about was one family that are in New York, and they agreed with me that it was a racist thing to share. And then I also shared that experience with a family who's also in the South with me, and they was basically telling me that I took the bait, and that I should have just kept my composure and just focused on giving the right answers, well, based on what I shared with family, like, I took the bait, meaning that I've shared too much information. Like, I'm going to go further into the interview, but when I did rant about it to a family member in the South, they told me that I should have just been more professional about it, which I thought was interesting. But I just noticed that people in the South, like, I can't share certain experiences with Southern people, like, especially black Southerners, because a lot of them unfortunately are socialized to tolerate certain things that a lot of up north people wouldn't tolerate, especially pertaining to racism. Because something like that, like an interview that type of interview would have happened in New York City, that I would have reported that person, and that person would have been dealt with differently, as opposed to the South, where employers could just get away with more. Because it just, to me, the South is more suitable for business owners, where they could get away with more things, and they could mistreat their employees more than they can in New York, because there are no protections for Southerners. So it's like especially black Southern people have to tolerate more disrespect compared to up north, where I'm originally from. So that was an adjustment that I had, that I couldn't, unfortunately, I couldn't adapt to, because in my mind I'm thinking, like, okay, is this something that I have to look forward to out here if I do decide to stay in the South? Because I'm a very straightforward person, and I'm a very blunt person, and to many Southerners, being too blunt can be interpreted as being disrespectful or rude. And I've already made it clear to some Southerners that I don't have a problem being labeled as rude, and I even told them up front that I'm a rude person, because it's hard for me to hold my tongue when it's something that I'm passionate about, or if it's something that I feel is disrespectful. And that's something that I couldn't get around being in the South. So getting back to the interview, after he tells me that story, he starts to ask me about my personal situation, and that's where I'm going to explain why my other family member said that I shared too much information, which I agree now that I think about it. But the next question that he asked me after sharing that racist story was, what is my family situation like out here? Meaning in Charlotte, what is my family situation in Charlotte like? And I, like a dummy, I told him, well, I don't have the type of family dynamic that I wish I would have had before coming here. And then he says, okay, it's okay if you decide to go back home where you originally came from, and it's okay to make a mistake. That's what his response was to me sharing that I didn't get the family experience that I would have hoped to get when I moved to the South. And I thought that was interesting, even though that it was not bad advice, but it was out of line to me, in my opinion. So after that question, he then asks me, what is my financial situation like? And I told him, well, I'm not working right now, and I don't plan on staying at the location that I'm staying in at the moment, because it's going to be too expensive for me to uphold, to maintain the rent. So I'm going to have to move to another location in the Charlotte area. So he said, oh, okay. So he said that the follow up answer to that was, well, you don't want to live somewhere where you got to work all day and night only just to pay bills, which is a good statement to share. But again, that was out of line, because I didn't come to the job interview for life lessons. I came to get a job, and like, to me, like, the way it went was very inappropriate in so many areas. And I do agree that I did reveal too much information about my family life and about my, like, personal finance, and about my moving situation, because I was living in the Uptown Charlotte area, and as you all know, everything is going up, including rent everywhere. And where I was staying at, they increased the rent to $250, and that's the base rent. So I would have had to pay an additional $150 added to that $250, because it's a mandatory package that came with the rent, which is very common in the South, like, where they would just share the base rent with you, but you will also have to pay additional fees for their package that comes with the rent that's not included, until you ask them about it, because they don't disclose everything, which used to annoy me, because I would call them specifically asking how much would I have to pay monthly, and they would just only disclose the monthly base rent, not sharing with me that there are other expenses that are going to be added to that rent. So the base rent increase on top of the additional fees from the technology package, like Wi-Fi, cable, water, pest control, garbage pickup, that all was added to the rent as well. So that was an additional of around like an additional $150. So it would have been a total of a almost like over $300 increase altogether. And the quality of the apartment wasn't worth that much to me. Even though it was a convenient area, I didn't need a car. I could walk wherever I wanted to go, like to get like groceries, like basic needs was walking distance. But again, it wasn't really worth the increase because of the thin walls. Like, you could hear everything outside. You could hear everything in the hallways. Like, like, the quality of the apartment was not worth the increase to me. But then again, most people don't pay for the apartment, they pay for the location, so I have to put that into perspective. I was paying for the location. It was a very convenient location. I was around restaurants, around Sephora, Lululemon, like all the shopping stuff. I was walking distance. I could walk there. So that's really what I was paying for. Now that I think about it, so again, I have to put that in perspective and keep that in mind too. It's not about the apartment; it's also about the locations. So it wasn't worth it to me. Like I rather just move outside of the city and get a car and travel to the city to get stuff instead of paying unreasonable rent, in my opinion, for a poor quality apartment because of the location. So anyway, getting back to the interview, he then asked me, "So you really need the job, huh?" And I told him, yeah, that's why I'm here. I came here because I do need work. But he said, "Oh, but you need it really bad." That's what his response was, and in my mind, I'm just composing myself during this interview because I really wanted to curse him out, but I was thinking to myself, don't do it because they already have a negative perception of New Yorkers, and being that a New Yorker that he hired robbed the bank, I don't want to give off a even more negative stereotype, even though I shouldn't have cared because they're gonna think negative stuff anyway, regardless of how I carry myself. But yeah, that was a very different experience for me. I've never experienced that in New York, even though I have had rude people interview me, but they would never come out of their face and ask me about my personal life because that's none of their business, and it has nothing to do with the job. Even though I do believe he was asking me that question to see how desperate I was and to see if I was gonna rob the bank like that other New Yorker that he hired would. But I guess it should have been a better way of doing that. Like, because again, that was very inappropriate to ask me those questions, and it was a stereotype as well. So yeah, that's all I have to say for today commentary because I'm still not over it. But again, it's something that was a learning experience for me, and it's something that I will never forget. Which is even more of a reason why, if I do ever decide to move back to the South, I would have to have a business of my own because I know, based on the way I am, I'm not a good ass kisser. And in the Southern hospitality, employers expect you, especially if you're a black person, they expect you to go 10 times above and beyond than a white person would have to. So that was another thing I noticed about the South, like in the South in general. Like I never understood it until I moved there, and that moment was like a big culture shock as well, and it was racist to me. But it just amazed me how like how a lot of black Southerners have to go through the BS, like because I'm pretty sure he's done it to other black people, not just me. But yeah, it's just it was an experience that I would never forget, and that's one of the reasons why if I ever did relocate back to the South, I would have to have a business of my own, and it would have to be a successful enough business where it can help me pay my bills and everything, so I wouldn't have to rely on going to a job and experience that type of racism that I experienced. Because I don't have the temperament like I used to, even though I kept it cool at the interview, but in my mind, I'm pretty sure my body language said it all, because I'm very good at giving off energy. Like my facial expressions has a way of revealing how I feel, and I have to work on that. So that's something that that I'm noticing about myself, that I like. if I ever was to move somewhere like that again, even though it was a beautiful experience overall, but again, if I- if I don't have a business, a successful business that I could take with me to the South, because I don't think it's only the Charlotte area. I believe most of the South is like this, which is why I believe the black people are so extra when it comes to hospitality, especially when white people are around. So yeah, thank you, you two, for my rant, and I hope I've encouraged others to rethink their option, if they're considering moving to the South for job purposes, because again, a job is not stable, especially in this economy, but it's even worse in the South, especially if you're a black person, and on top of that, a New Yorker. I would hold out, even if you were offered a job. I would still make sure that you have other streams of income that you can rely on in case this job offer in the South doesn't work out. Because if you only depend on a Southern employer to pay your bills, it can ruin your credit, because they have a history of laying people off, and as a result, it has hurt people's credit because of that. So yeah, my suggestion to those who are considering relocating to the South because of a job offer: please make sure you have other streams of income that could help you pay the bills, because working for an employer in the South alone, again, can potentially ruin your credit if you don't have a backup plan, because they love playing games with people. Some of them don't pay on time. Some of them want access to your credit. Some of them want to know if you own a house. Some of them want to know what your credit is like those type of questions has nothing to do with a person's work ethic. I don't care how they word it or whatever excuse they have for that. There's nothing they can say that's going to make sense as to why they want to know that kind of information about people. I think that's too personal, and I think that's irrelevant to determine whether or not a person is a good candidate for the job. But again, that's me. Some people don't have a problem with that, especially native Southerners who are used to the abuse, because that is abuse to me. Even though I could be extra to some people, this me saying this might sound extra to some people, but I don't think it's extra. I really believe that if you're a black person moving to any part of the South, you need to have more than one income regardless. And not only in the South, but overall in general, it would be wiser to have another backup plan in case a job doesn't work out, because it's very easy to lose a job in the South. It's easy to get a job, but it's hard to keep a job. And if you're not a good ass kisser, or those tap dancing Negroes, you're not going to last long on a job, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. But I'm usually good at observing things, and I believe there's a reason why black people kiss ass when they relocate to the South. Even though I could be generalizing, because I'm sure it's not all native black Southerners, but it's too many in my opinion. But yeah, I'm gonna go now. Thank you again, YouTube, and I hope that I inspire someone to rethink their options if they're considering moving to the South for job reasons. Thank you.